Hi, welcome to Simple Shifts, conversations on weight, life, health, and mindset. I'm Martha McKinnon, and this is Peter Morrison, my partner and brother. Hi,
Hello.
everyone. Hi. So, how are things going in your world?
They're going well. How are things going in your world?
They're going well. We're at podcast number 12. Is that what you told me?
I believe that's correct.
So we're sticking with it so far.
Is it getting easier for you?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it's a process like anything. So today I'm really excited because I've been talking with you about mindless eating, mindless eating, mindless eating. It's a book that I read. Oh my gosh, I was just looking back at my notes and it was way back in June of 2010.
Mm.
And so it's a book by Brian Wansink, who was a professor at Cornell, and he did tons of research on sort of the psychological behavior of people around food and made tons of huge discoveries. And I had seen the book on bookshelves and I had always just sort of discounted it because I didn't like the title. It was, mindless eating, why we eat more than we think. And I was insulted because I thought, I know what I eat. And turns out I didn't. So I read the book. It was June of, like I said, 2010. And at that point, I was a lifetime Weight Watchers member and I was like 7 or 8 pounds over goal. And I really seemed pretty stuck. And, I first became a lifetime member way back in my 20s. So by then I was in my 40s. And so we had talked with the leader, I seem to be doing everything that I should have been doing according to Weight Watchers, tracking, and the scale seemed kind of stuck. I was still at a healthy weight, range, only a few pounds over goal. And the suggestion was, well, maybe you should just raise your goal, just let it be. And I thought about that, but it was time for us to go to Wisconsin, where we're in a really rural community for the summer, and there's no Weight Watchers meetings around. It'd be like over an hour to get there. And so I decided to just take the summer off and not weigh myself and not attend Weight Watchers meetings and sort of dive into this mindless eating approach and, read it and apply the suggestions in it. And I did that. And lo and behold, I came back in the fall and I hadn't weighed myself, but I went back to Weight Watchers and I was under my goal. So I had lost, 8 or more pounds in a way that really felt effortless and kind of fun because I'd made it kind of a fun experiment. And I was hooked. I mean, personally, I was hooked as soon as I started reading the book because it was just one aha after another for me. And so I got really, really excited. And I've been sort of a big advocate of those teachings ever since because they were just so helpful for me. It just helped me to see the whole process in a whole new light and appreciate just how much we're influenced by our environment and by marketing and all of these ways that we don't really appreciate. And we truly are, as he demonstrated in experiment after experiment through the years, eating more than we realize because of some of these influences. So I'm excited to talk more about that and help people become aware of the fact that it's worth exploring because to apply this kind of approach just seems so much easier than, a more sort of diet-based approach. He's sort of anti-diet, if you will.
If you were somewhat offended or insulted by the book title and you had it for a while before you actually opened it and started reading it, do you remember like what was your like how did you get over that hurdle?
I think for a while, his name was just popping up a lot. He was showing up on a lot of news reports, and the name kept coming up. The book kept coming up. There was actually, and I'm not even going to be remember the blogger now that I was really reading at the time, and he was somebody I respected, not even playing in the weight loss space. I think he was in the personal finance space. And he wrote a very a compelling article about the book, a really, really positive review on how it had helped him and how he
Mm.
appreciated the psychological mindset. And I think I tend to sometimes be a little stubborn. And so again, it was just a lesson in opening myself up. And there was just enough information at that point. And I was pretty frustrated and at the struggle and ready to try something new. So I think that it was just sort of like the timing has to be right for you to hear something that might have been said, for years and years, and you don't hear it until you're able to hear it for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know, did he ever do a TED Talk?
He did. Well, there's a post that on our website that we can link out into the show notes where I walk people through my experience with the book, and I do include links out to some of his video
And
information.
do you remember, is that TED Talk about the book Mindless Eating, or is it about just
Just about, no, it's really just more about the whole, I mean, because the book Mindless Eating does really incorporate or summarize what he learned, from all of this experimentation. And so it's very much, while it's not a review of the book specifically, it is very much in alignment with the book. So, shall I talk more about the book? Do you have any questions? You're going to read it too, right?
yes, that's my goal. I know we've talked about it and I've heard you mention certain aspects of it
Yeah.
and but I actually
I
haven't read it. So, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess like anything, I tend to be an evangelist. I've had things that have helped me in my life, yoga, I would say Weight Watchers at times, different things, different books I've read, and they're so helpful to me that I just want to sort of spread the word and help others. I'm always wanting to share, when something positive happens for me. And so years ago, on the blog again, we did one summer. I just sort of did I called it the Mindless Eating Challenge, and it was just sort of um, a suggestion that I put out to readers that we would kind of do a book club, a
Mhm.
reading of the book together. And then a week for about 6 weeks, I then just summarized 2 chapters at a time over 6 weeks. And we corresponded with one another through the comments. And that was just another way for me to share my positive experience with it. And so what I was thinking we might do here over the next few weeks is take that same, do that same thing where because sometimes people I like to listen and watch as opposed to read. That can be real helpful. And so instead of having to necessarily, and maybe you'll be encouraged to read the book, but if not, give you enough information and enough insight, maybe where you can even start applying some of the principles without having to read the book. So if you think you'd be interested, Peter, in sort of walking through the book that way, 2 chapters at a time over the next few weeks, I thought that's something we could explore
Yeah,
here. If you
definitely.
think
No, I'm very
that would be
interested. Especially
interesting.
um you said something about it's not was it intended to be a diet book or
No, in fact,
no?
he basically, chapter one says, deprivation diets don't
Don't.
work. And, of course, we're all going to have some type of boundaries, right, and guardrails in our life. We can't just, especially in a world like this where food is so plentiful. But he gives a lot of really compelling evidence to suggest that when we deprive ourselves, deprivation works against us. Any diet
Mm.
that's too restrictive, and he basically says it works against our body. Our bodies rebel against it biologically because we are really set up for feast or famine. And if our bodies see a lot of food, you know all of the signals in our bodies are to eat it, and then our minds work against deprivation diets because as soon as you tell, I know for me personally, and a lot of people, as soon as you tell yourself you can't have something, it's
Mhm.
all you can think about, right? It's sort of like that.
Right.
Don't think about the pink elephant, right? And all of a sudden you can see is a pink elephant. And so deprivation diets work against your body. They work against your psychology and your mind, and also, the environment that we live in is really set up to not support you trying to, restrict yourself in any significant way. So he's really puts forth an approach that's sort of he says the best diet, he has some really good lines in the book, and he says the best diet is the one you don't know you're on. So the overall philosophy of the book is to really help us present first all the ways that you are eating more than you realize and give you some guidelines for things you can do to set up your environment and your habits to support you instead of working against you. So he'd say a deprivation, restrictive diet is going to work against you, but there are things you can do that are real easy that will support you in a way that feels kind of pretty easy and effortless. And so that's what he really advocates. The other thing he says, he talks about the mindless margin. And he says, we all know if we eat, like we all eat sort of what we do every day. And if we eat way more like Thanksgiving full, right? We know that. If we suddenly start restricting ourselves and cut our calories way down, we're going to know that it's going to be uncomfortable in our bodies and in our psychology. But he says there's a place where he calls it the mindless margin where you can sort of nobody and he talks about in the book the fact that we're terrible at estimating how many calories we're consumed, and he's done all kinds of research around that. So that there's this margin where you could eat a little bit less, a little bit more every day and not feel it, not notice it. And he says if you can tap into that margin where you cut your calories, 100 to maybe 250 a day, you're not going to really feel it. But it's enough if you do that every day over time, over a year, to lose weight. He does refer to a study where he says some of the studies say that if most of us could cut our calories like 1 to 200 calories a day, it would take care of the overweight problem for a good portion of the population. Because what happens over time, we just eat a little bit too much every day over time. Metabolism slows a little bit over time. And as we age, a lot of people will say, I never had a problem. And then suddenly here I am in my 40s, 50s, 60s, and I've gained this weight. But it happens so slowly and gradually that you didn't even realize it was happening until it became a problem.
Well, it makes all the sense in the world, but I
Uh-huh.
feel like our culture, our society it's like the instant gratification. It's like if I can't do it in a day, in a week, in a month,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. So I guess I'm here like at 62 almost years in with all my experience personally and with everybody I've interacted with in like various capacities and everything I've read in this space to try to convince people that it's that sort of societal expectation that's
mhm,
also working against us,
mm.
that we have these unrealistic, and that came up again in a couple of other podcasts that I was listening to this week, this fact that um, we set these expectations for ourselves, or we set a deadline, and, for example, we say we need to lose 30 pounds in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And you get to the end of those 3 or 4 months, maybe you've got a big event, you've got a wedding or you're going to attend or some event and you've lost 15 pounds and you decide you failed. Where you really succeeded. It's just taking longer than you thought it would take. And the truth is that this podcast was talking about the fact that often things are going to take longer than we think because we're just bad at estimating how long things are going to take. And if we can change our mindset and change our thinking, and instead of, feeling disappointed at that point, just be really excited and say, this is where I'm moving toward, and I'll keep doing what I need to do, slow and steady. And it takes as long as it takes, and if we could give ourselves that um, latitude and that grace, our lives would be so different. And it's sort of this, I would think it's the same of, I think there's so many comparisons between what we've done here, like on the website through the years, right? And trying new things, people with their finances. I mean, building a business, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, Looking back, people will often say, it didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, or I thought it would happen in a year and it took 5 years or whatever it is. But yeah, I think you're right in that observation that it's the societal message too that works against us, this need for immediate gratification. Because the truth is, we didn't gain the weight overnight, right? We didn't get in debt, however, whatever you want to talk about overnight. It took time. It only reached a point where you were suddenly then uncomfortable that you decided you wanted to make a change. But if you really sort of looked back at how long it took you to where you were right now and gave yourself the same amount of time to change things up, it would be very different,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not unlike us, like you said before with this podcast.
right? The website, you know? I mean, I don't know how, like, and again, I mean, I think we could, that could be a whole other, topic, like all of the challenges with the website through the years, and you think something's going well and then something shifts and you've got to regroup and, Weight Watchers changes their points and suddenly you've got a lot of work to do to go back to try to change the information to keep it relevant and helpful for people. And so life is life is always going to have challenges, right? That's part of the deal. And so again, it is if we can change it's really, I think it starts with our like really changing our thinking. And part of what I did that summer was I did change my thinking.
Hmm.
I did step back, and because I do tend to take things too seriously. And so I did say, just lighten up on yourself, have fun, explore, and see what happens, because if you're doing something and it's not working, you're going to have to change things up, right? I mean, to try new things, to find something that will work. And sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised and find out that it can actually be easier than you thought. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I get so excited about this with people, because where I had felt like I was struggling, this felt this felt easy. This felt effortless. Felt fun. And I think it was partially because I sort of made it an experiment. I gave myself some space around it, but also what he's saying is true. I mean, there's a lot of ways that our environment, the things we're doing, we're working against ourselves. And if we make little shifts in our habits, if we make little shifts in our environment, it sort of becomes like he says, it's mindless, it's brainless. So it becomes effortless. And I think that that's what we really need. You go back to James Clear, right? I'm a huge fan of James Clear and his Atomic Habits, and we've talked about that. He distills that down to say that, to incorporate a new habit or to build a new habit, you want to figure out how to make it obvious, right? How to make it attractive, how to make it easy, and how to make it, what's the last one? Mm,
Fun? That's not
obvious,
fun, right? No.
easy, attractive. It begins with an S, satisfying and satisfying. And so all of those things are very positive, right? It's he's learned from, I mean, he's done a ton of work and learning around habits. None of that says make it hard, make it difficult, beat yourself up, you know. It's all, so it's really in alignment with the teachings from, mindless eating.
And that just, I came across this quote recently, and I know I've shared it before on our social media, but it is a James Clear quote, and it says, "Your current habits are perfectly designed to deliver your current results."
Right? There it is. And so, and like, but to change your habits is going to take work because they are often deeply ingrained, right? They're hardwired in to our brain. And so you have to figure out ways to make, again, habit change like this. Make it easy on yourself, work with your psychology, work with your biology instead of against it. Um, and if Weight Watchers is working perfectly for you and you feel like you don't need any of this, well, then you could skip over these. But I feel like there's always something we can learn. And a lot, and truthfully, I've seen through the years, some of the teachings from, Brian Wansig's work show up in the Weight Watchers material too, because he was really widely published. Around some of these findings. So I think it just, the more we learn, the more we know, the easier we can make it on ourselves, the more we're going to succeed. And I get so excited because it was hard for me to go back. It was not hard for me. It was hard to realize it's been so long. But to go back and realize that that was really the shift. I mean, so I lost that weight. I ended up under goal, and I've never been over goal since. I mean, and that seems like a miracle in and of itself because it was through menopause, through lots of ups and downs of life, and those teachings. It was just, and again, we never know when a shift, like something's going to happen that just creates this aha moment for us. But it was clearly one of those aha moments for me. And I hope that by sharing my excitement about this and more details of the book and more of the suggestions, that I can help others, have a similar aha moment, because that would make me really, really happy.
Well, awesome. Looking forward to jumping into the book and seeing what we can dissect from it.
Yeah, so next what we'll plan to do, we'll include in the show notes links out to the Mindless Eating Challenge and various materials like that. And then in the next podcast, what we'll do is just talk in a little more detail about what chapters 1 and 2 have to tell us about how we can set ourselves up for success in a way that seems easier.
Great. Looking forward.
All right, stay tuned. Have a good one, everyone.